The world, in those forgotten epochs, was a realm of colossal stillness and profound echoing silence, existing long before the quickening pace of mortal life began to stir upon the land. The initial creation had subsided into a great, endless calm, and the children of Uranus and Gaia, the Titans, moved slowly through the nascent cosmos, their vast shapes barely disturbing the thick, swirling mists of primordial air. Time itself had not yet become the relentless ticking thing that mortals know, but rather a slow-moving river, flowing with a heavy, golden current that stretched moments into ages of quiet dominion. The very fabric of reality seemed pliable and soft, molded by the hands of these first rulers who had inherited the boundless space from their deposed father Uranos, and now governed the tranquil chaos. Kronos, the youngest yet the greatest of the Titans, sat upon his mountainous throne, a figure of immense and terrifying patience, and the entire sweep of the newly ordered universe stretched endlessly before him. His authority was not defined by swift action or clamorous war, but by the gradual, inevitable passage of all things, an authority that seemed to settle gently upon the shoulders of the world like an ancient, heavy mantle. The sun rose and fell with a mesmerizing, languid cadence, guided across the sky by the watchful Hyperion and his luminous sister Thea, ensuring that the light spread gently over the boundless plains of the earth. In the deep trenches of the oceans where the light faded to a perpetual indigo, Oceanus and Tethys maintained the great, slow circulatory rhythm of the cosmic waters, which flowed and cascaded through unseen channels across the planet's silent body. This was the Golden Age, a period steeped in a deep, undisturbed repose, where the winds drifted softly over the high mountains and the deep valleys were swathed in eternal, undisturbed twilight, waiting patiently for a new dawn. The elder Titans, Coeus and Phoebe, governed the very foundations of thought and prophecy, their silent wisdom spreading gently across the firmament, while Crius and Iapetus established the physical boundaries and pillars that held the cosmos in its rightful place. Every movement was measured, every change gradual, lending the entire epoch an atmosphere of deep, unwavering security, an impression of timeless power that could never be threatened or moved from its ancient purpose. Yet, beneath this seemingly impenetrable surface of calm, a dark prophetic shadow began to lengthen across the heart of the great sovereign, Kronos. The ancient words of his own father, a bitter curse spoken during his final terrible defeat, now echoed relentlessly in the hollow chambers of Kronos' mind, a chilling whisper promising that he too would be undone by the very power he had spawned. The Titan, who controlled the destiny of the world, could not escape the twisting, inevitable flow of his own fate, and this fear, acute and sharp, began to corrupt the slow, gentle rhythm of his governments. The great power he possessed, the ability to lengthen or shorten the span of any life, was now turned inward, warping the protective instinct of parenthood into a desperate, monstrous act of self-preservation against the chilling words of the prophecy. His consort, the gentle and deeply loving Rhea, whose flow of spirit was as sweet and soothing as a mountain spring, watched this growing terror with a slow, debilitating agony that began to settle upon her own divine heart. Rhea was the Titaness of motherhood and the flowing earth, and she yearned only for the safe settlement and quiet growth of her children, dreaming of the day they would join the cosmic hierarchy in peaceful repose. She felt the sweet stirrings of her first child, Hestia, the eternal hearthfire, and cherished the moments as they stretched, holding the promise of warmth and enduring stability for the newly formed universe. But the peace was abruptly shattered by the chilling realization of Kronos' terrifying plan, a plan rooted in the desperate paranoia that the endless expanse of time itself could not assuage. When the time arrived for Hestia, the eldest, to draw her first soft breath, Kronos immediately appeared, his countenance grim and unwavering, his great form overshadowing the gentle space of their inner sanctum. He took the newborn goddess from Rhea's outstretched arms, not with parental warmth, but with a terrifying, absolute finality, and with a monstrous, convulsive effort, he swallowed the tiny, perfect form whole, consigning her living essence to the dark, churning depths of his immortal belly. The sight was a devastating, silent blow to Rhea's soul, a profound rupture in the calm fabric of her reality. But in the face of Kronos' immovable, fearful will, all she could offer was a silent, sorrowful cry that was instantly swallowed by the echoing emptiness of the great hall. The moments stretched into sorrowful years as the celestial drama unfolded with a terrifying, heartbreaking repetition, shattering the golden tranquility of the Titan age with each successive birth. Poseidon, the mighty spirit of the earth-shaking sea, was next to be born into the world, his potential power already humming in the air like a distant, resonant chord. But he too was seized by his fearful father and instantly plunged into the eternal, chilling darkness within Kronos' immortal belly. Then came the somber and silent Hades, the one whose destiny was to rule the hidden, sunless regions beneath the earth, and the pattern of destruction repeated itself, ensuring that the prophecy might never take root in the world of the living. Rhea's beautiful spirit began to wither under the relentless, crushing weight of her sorrow, and her voice, usually a flowing murmur of comforting sound, became a mere whisper of constant, debilitating grief that only the silent stones could truly hear. She endured the birth of Demeter, the generous and fertile spirit of the harvest and the earth's endless bounty, only to witness the rapid, brutal consumption, watching as the hope of her daughter's joyful reign settled into the dark oblivion of Kronos' terrible stomach. Finally, the magnificent Hera, the beautiful spirit destined for queenship, was brought forth into the world, and Rhea watched with a despairing heart as this final daughter was also stolen away, lost to the same cavernous internal prison as her siblings. The world outside continued to drift and flow with its golden, uninterrupted rhythm, unaware of the profound, secret tragedy unfolding at the very heart of the cosmic monarchy, believing instead that the Titan children were merely tucked away in a safe, unseen nursery. Kronos, convinced that he had outmaneuvered the chilling prophecy and secured his throne for an eternity of quiet rule, settled back into his deep repose, his fear temporarily placated by the silence of his internal captives. He imagined the vast, empty space within him, feeling secure in the knowledge that his potential downfall was contained, silenced, and perpetually held captive by the very essence of time that he commanded.
But Rhea, the sorrowful mother, could endure the quiet torment no longer, for the pain of her losses had become an immovable, agonizing mountain upon her weary soul, threatening to extinguish the very light of her existence. She resolved that the next child, the final hope for her shattered family and the future of the world, would not suffer the same terrible, suffocating fate as its brothers and sisters, lost in the dreadful inner void. With a heart that was both broken and fiercely resolved, she went in secret to the primordial Gaia, the Earth Mother, and poured out her overwhelming, debilitating grief, begging for a guiding wisdom to help her thwart the monstrous, paralyzing fear of the great sovereign Kronos. Gaia, deeply saddened by the sight of her daughter's quiet suffering and the destruction of her own grandchildren, listened closely to Rhea's desperate plea and gradually unveiled a plan of profound deception, a strategy woven from the ancient threads of rock and secrecy. Following the Earth Mother's solemn instructions, Rhea fled in the quiet of a starless night, traveling with a slow, urgent urgency across the sleeping face of the world until she reached the deeply hidden, fertile valleys of Crete. There, in the secret silence of a deep, shadowed cave upon the slopes of Mount Ida, away from the distant, fearful gaze of the mighty Kronos, she finally brought forth her sixth and final child into the tranquil, expectant air. The infant was magnificent and strong, a spirit of the purest, brightest energy, destined to be called Zeus, the glorious wielder of the thunder and the future lord of the sky. And the moment of his birth felt like a quiet, internal explosion of long-suppressed cosmic hope. Rhea immediately entrusted the precious, vulnerable child to the care of the swift, silent nymphs and the powerful, watchful Curetes, guardians of the earth's deepest secrets, instructing them to raise the child in absolute secrecy. She watched as they hid him away in the most protected, shadowy recess of the deep cave, where his cries would be instantly muffled by the rich, thick earth and the ceaseless, rhythmic pounding of their ritualistic protective shields. The sorrowful Titaness then returned to her silent, empty hall, her sorrow momentarily calmed by the knowledge of her carefully laid deception, and gathered a great, heavy stone from the wild, unmoving earth nearby. She wrapped the cold, unsuspecting boulder tightly in the swaddling clothes intended for her newborn son, disguising the silent rock with an illusion of soft, vulnerable flesh, perfectly recreating the size and shape of the child she had hidden away. When Kronos eventually approached, his eternal gaze filled with the chilling, detached anticipation of the destroyer, Rhea presented the carefully concealed rock with a face drained of all emotion, a mask of utter and complete resignation to the cruel law of prophecy. Kronos, blinded by his own profound, pervasive fear and the consuming confidence in his mastery over time, did not pause to inspect the offering, nor did he allow himself to be moved by the sight of Rhea's shattered spirit. He seized the swaddled stone, and with a final echoing gulp that reverberated silently through the ancient hall, he consumed the disguised rock, believing completely that he had finally conquered his ultimate downfall and secured his eternal reign. He believed the terrible debt was finally paid, the prophecy was neutralized, and the cosmos could settle once more into the quiet, unchanging rhythm of his absolute and unchallenged dominion. And so, the vast world returned to its long, slow flow. The Age of Titans continued its gentle, deliberate journey through the eternal night, unaware that the true future was already growing quietly in the shadows of the sacred mountain. The 5 swallowed children waited in the dark stillness of their father's belly, an internal cosmos of captive gods, while the 6th, the powerful, bright infant Zeus slowly grew in secret, protected by the resonant drumming and the deep, rich silence of the hidden Cretan cave. The tranquility of the Golden Age was a delicate, thin illusion, for the new seed of change had been planted deep within the earth, destined to eventually bloom into the violent, world-shaking storm of the Titanomachy, which would soon shatter the stillness forever. The great ancient moment was suspended, stretched to its absolute limit, waiting patiently for the young, hidden spirit to finally emerge and challenge the consuming power of eternal, fearful time.
The endless reign of Kronos, though outwardly calm and unhurried, was fundamentally rooted in a singular, chilling memory, an echo that continually resonated through the vast, silent chambers of his immense and powerful mind. It was the solemn, agonizing curse whispered by his defeated father, Uranus, as the sky god was brutally overthrown and forever cast aside into the deep, echoing darkness of Tartarus. The prophecy was simple and inescapable, a thread woven into the very fabric of eternal time, that just as Kronos had risen to supremacy by violently displacing his own sire, so too would he eventually fall at the hands of one of his own divine children. This ancient pronouncement acted as a slow-acting poison, gradually corrupting the Titan's authority, transforming his rule from a golden dominion into a fortress built upon paralyzing, ceaseless fear. Kronos, the very embodiment of time, spent his ageless existence attempting to escape the twisting, inevitable flow of his destiny, dedicating his boundless patience to ensuring that this chilling whisper would never truly take form in the world of the living. He governed the celestial bodies with an even more pronounced, deliberate slowness, making every cosmic motion a measured step designed to suppress the nascent forces of change that perpetually stirred beneath the surface of the quiet universe. But with the passage of each slow golden year, the shadow of the prophecy lengthened, deepening the lines of paranoia etched upon the Titan's mighty countenance, convincing him that the only true path to safety was the path of absolute monstrous suppression. The terrifying act began with the birth of Hestia, the first of the new generation of celestial powers, whose luminous spirit glowed with the pure, quiet promise of the eternal flame and the sacred hearth. As Hestia was abruptly seized and tragically consumed, Kronos believed that he was not an infanticidal tyrant, but rather a wise sovereign fulfilling a necessary, painful duty to maintain the hard-won tranquility of the universe. He settled back upon his throne, imagining the tiny, contained flame of Hestia's spirit now quietly burning within the chilling depths of his immortal body. Convinced that the greatest threat to his rule had been instantly neutralized. He felt the vast, empty space within him, now occupied by a small, silent prisoner, and found a temporary, cold comfort in the absolute certainty of his monstrous power. But the temporary peace soon fractured with the inevitable birth of Poseidon, the child whose very presence hinted at the uncontrolled, earth-shaking might of the unbounded seas and the profound, untamable depths of the swirling oceans. Kronos watched as the infant's power faintly hummed in the air, a distant, resonant chord of potential upheaval, confirming the chilling truth of his father's curse and shattering the fragile illusion of his own security. He acted with the same terrifying, detached swiftness, absorbing the powerful spirit of the sea god into his internal darkness, adding another captive to the silent, growing prison that he carried deep within his core. The Titan became acutely aware of the internal pressure, a faint rhythmic surge that mirrored the rise and fall of the cosmic tide, a constant, unwanted reminder of the tremendous powers he desperately sought to contain. Rhea, the gentle Titaness, observed this horrifying, repetitive spectacle with a slow, debilitating agony, the constant loss settling upon her heart like an immovable mountain of sorrow, freezing the once flowing sweetness of her spirit. She felt the birth of each new child, of somber Hades and fertile Demeter, as a moment of profound, painful hope, quickly followed by the sharp, annihilating finality of their immediate consumption, leaving behind only the echoing emptiness of the great hall. Her cries were not the loud, tempestuous shrieks of an outraged goddess, but rather the quiet, ceaseless whispers of a grieving mother, instantly swallowed by the immense, apathetic stillness of the ancient, unmoving stone walls. She would spend timeless stretches wandering the lonely halls, the flowing marble cool beneath her silent feet, her divine form bowed under the crushing weight of her accumulating, unreleased grief. The sorrow reached its agonizing peak with the birth of the magnificent Hera, the beautiful spirit destined for the heights of queenship, whose luminous spirit glowed with the pure, quiet promise of the eternal flame and the sacred hearth. Rhea clung to the newborn goddess, holding her close to her desperately aching heart, trying desperately to interpose her own gentle, protective power against the crushing, inevitable will of her fear-paralyzed consort. She pleaded in silent, desperate thought for Kronos to pause, to look, to see the pure, untainted beauty of the life he was about to extinguish. But his eternal gaze remained focused only on the chilling, inescapable shadow of the ancient, bitter prophecy. The subsequent, inevitable consumption was the final, devastating blow, extinguishing the last flicker of hope and plunging Rhea into a deep, desolate despair that threatened to extinguish the very light of her compassionate existence.
Now, only the sixth and final child remained, the promise of a future yet to be determined, and Rhea knew that another life could not be surrendered to the cold, paralyzing depths of Kronos' internal prison. The immense pain of her losses had finally hardened her gentle spirit, transforming her debilitating sorrow into a fierce, resolute determination to challenge the absolute rule of fearful time itself. With a heart that was equally shattered and fiercely resolved, she slipped away from the monumental hall in the deepest quiet of a night devoid of any guiding star, traveling with a desperate, low urgency across the vast, sleeping plains of the world. Her destination was the great echoing domain of the primordial Earth Mother, Gaia, the boundless source of all life and all wisdom, to whom Rhea poured out the overwhelming, debilitating grief of her violated motherhood. Gaia, deeply saddened by the mournful tale and the sight of her daughter's quiet suffering, listened closely to the words that flowed from Rhea like a broken river, and slowly, gently offered a plan of profound and necessary deception. The Earth Mother instructed the Titaness to journey to the deeply hidden, fertile valleys of the distant island of Crete, a place shrouded in the Earth's own ancient secrecy, completely shielded from the distant, penetrating gaze of the fearful sovereign. Following these sacred whispered instructions, Rhea eventually reached the mountainous island, the rich earth welcoming her weary feet, and there, in the secret silence of a deep, shadowed cave upon the mighty slopes of Mount Ida, she finally gave birth
to her sixth and final son. The infant's presence was a palpable, immediate shift in the atmospheric quiet, a spirit of the purest, brightest energy that felt instantly destined to wield the glorious, untamable power of the thunder and the open sky. Rhea entrusted the precious, vulnerable child, who was given the magnificent name Zeus, to the absolute care of the silent, watchful Kuretes, the swift dancing nymphs, and the guardians of the earth's most profound and sacred secrets. The gentle Titaness watched as they carefully hid the radiant child deep within the cave's most protected, shadowy recess, ensuring that the faintest sound of his vital infant cry would be instantly muffled and absorbed by the surrounding thick, rich earth. To further shield the sound, the powerful Kuretes stood guard, performing a ritualistic, continuous dance of defense, constantly clashing their bronze shields with their heavy bronze spears in a rhythmic, resonant pounding that filled the space with overwhelming noise. This powerful, ceaseless drumming created a perpetual, rolling thunder that echoed and reverberated through the cave's dark, winding passages, ensuring that no single sound from the hidden, rapidly growing child could ever possibly escape to the wide world above. The constant, repetitive sound was a lullaby of protection, a deliberate clamor designed to confuse the ear of any distant listener, effectively neutralizing the chilling, ever-present threat of Kronos' obsessive vigilance. Rhea's heavy task was not yet complete, and she returned to her sorrowful hall, the silence of the journey back broken only by the triumphant, secret knowledge held tightly within her heart. To confront her fearful consort, she gathered a great, heavy stone from the wild, unmoving earth, choosing a boulder that possessed the right density and cold, absolute stillness to perform its vital, agonizing role. She carefully wrapped the cold, unsuspecting rock tightly in the finest swaddling clothes intended for her newborn son, skillfully disguising the silent weight of the stone with an absolute illusion of soft, vulnerable, warm flesh. When Kronos finally appeared, his eternal gaze filled with the chilling, predictable anticipation of the destroyer, Rhea stood before him, her face a perfect mask of draining sorrow and quiet, absolute resignation to the cruel law of the prophecy. Kronos, blinded completely by the profound, pervasive fear of his downfall and the consuming confidence in his mastery over time, did not once pause to inspect the presented offering. He immediately seized the disguised rock, and with a final echoing gulp that reverberated silently through the ancient hall, he consumed the heavy, cold deception, believing with absolute certainty that he had finally conquered his ultimate prophesied demise. The Titan of Time had swallowed the stone, but he had tragically failed to swallow the future, and the vast world returned to its long, slow flow, the age of Titans continuing its deliberate journey toward a destiny now secretly being shaped elsewhere. The 5 swallowed children waited in the dark, contained stillness of their father's immense body, an internal cosmos of captive nascent gods, while the 6th, the bright, powerful infant Zeus, slowly grew to strength in the deep quiet of the hidden Cretan cave. The tranquility of the Titan age was a delicate, thin illusion, for the seed of massive, world-changing rebellion had been planted, destined to eventually bloom into the violent resonant storm of the Titanomachy, which would soon shatter the quiet repose forever.
Deep within the secluded, fertile slopes of Mount Ida, where the earth breathed out the oldest, most tranquil secrets of Gaia, the great cave became a sanctuary of profound and enduring stillness, a world completely separate from the slow-moving dominion of the paranoid titans. Within this massive, quiet chasm, the infant Zeus was cradled by the very heart of the Earth Mother, his presence protected not by towering walls of bronze, but by the ceaseless, resonant sound of the dedicated Curetes and the soft, flowing silence of the nurturing nymphs. These swift-footed nymphs tended to the needs of the radiant infant with an almost devotional care, their movements as quiet and fluid as the mountain streams that flowed unseen through the heart of Crete, ensuring that the child's early existence was steeped in pure, undisturbed repose. They gathered the finest, most potent honey from the wild, unmoving rock faces, a substance rich with the golden essence of the silent earth, feeding the child this celestial nectar with patient and gentle hands. The cave air, thick with the scent of damp moss and unseen blooms, remained cool and internally fresh, creating a perfect, isolated climate for the vigorous, secret growth of the future Lord of the Sky, sheltering him completely from the overwhelming heat of the outside sun. But the most dedicated and constant nurse was the gentle, ancient goat Amalthea, whose abundant, warm milk flowed freely into the infant's eager mouth, nourishing his divine form with the patient, enduring strength of the living earth. Amalthea moved slowly and deliberately within the confines of the deep recess, her presence a soft, comforting shadow, and the gentle sound of her quiet breathing blended perfectly with the distant, rhythmic drumming, weaving a tapestry of protective sound. Zeus drew deeply from her life-giving warmth, and his small, vulnerable frame gradually began to absorb the deep, foundational power that would eventually allow him to stand against the very principle of time that had consumed his siblings. The years began to stretch and melt away within the silent, eternal confines of the cave, and the child grew with a supernatural swiftness, transforming from a vulnerable infant into a young, powerfully built god whose presence began to faintly illuminate the darkest corners of his subterranean sanctuary. As Zeus entered the silent stages of adolescence, his inherent, untamable power began to stir and awaken within him, manifesting first as a deep, resonant hum that thrummed gently beneath his skin, an internal chord mirroring the cosmic forces he was born to command. He spent long, contemplative hours observing the world from the cave's wide, shadowed mouth, watching the mighty Hyperion guide the blazing chariot of the sun across the endless deep blue expanse of the day. The vast, unhurried movements of the Titan-ruled cosmos were slowly imprinted upon his developing mind, instilling in him a profound, quiet understanding of the patience required to govern the limitless energies of the sprawling universe. He watched the great, slow-moving clouds drift and gather above the highest, unmoving peaks, and felt a thrilling, nascent connection to the sudden, sharp flashes of distant, harmless lightning that sometimes briefly illuminated the far horizon. The wise, swift-footed nymphs, recognizing the accelerating pace of his divine growth, began to gently instruct him on the tragic, silent history of the cosmos,
carefully unveiling the true narrative of his lineage and the chilling fate of his older brothers and sisters. They spoke in soft, flowing whispers of the boundless authority of the great sovereign, Kronos, explaining the ancient curse of Uranos and the absolute paralyzing fear that drove the Titan to his monstrous, annihilating acts of self-preservation. These sorrowful tales settled upon the young god's spirit, gradually replacing the simple tranquility of his childhood with a heavy, profound sense of both grief and inescapable, predetermined responsibility towards his silenced family and the captive world. The nymphs taught him not only the history of sorrow, but also the deep intrinsic connection he shared with the powerful elements, instructing him how to reach into the very essence of the atmosphere to coax forth the nascent thunder and the swift, piercing bolt of lightning. He learned to control the elemental forces through slow, deliberate, meditative focus, allowing the electric energy to flow through his outstretched hand, initially producing only a gentle, contained spark that quickly dissipated into the cool, silent air. With each passing moon, the spark grew stronger, becoming a sharp, controlled spear of pure light, illuminating the shadowed recess of the cave with brief, spectacular bursts of powerful white energy. One timeless afternoon, while observing the silent, distant movement of the clouds, a moment of profound, shattering clarity settled upon his spirit with the weight and permanence of an ancient, unmovable stone, finally illuminating his destined path. The image of the great, sad Titaness Rhea, her face a mask of utter and complete resignation as she presented the cold, unfeeling stone, flashed into his mind with a searing, agonizing vividness, finally revealing the depth of her courage and sacrifice. He understood with perfect, absolute certainty that his entire existence had been a deliberate act of profound rebellion, a silent, powerful weapon forged in secrecy and sustained by the unwavering, gentle love of his grieving mother and the quiet complicity of the earth itself.
At that profound, transformative moment, the powerful, resonant hum beneath his skin ceased to be a simple chord of potential energy and suddenly sharpened into a distinct, focused song of absolute, righteous purpose, instantly marking the end of his safe, hidden childhood. The youthful god stood at the mouth of the silent cave, feeling the immense, collective weight of his lost siblings and the great, heavy mantle of their shared, shattered destiny settling firmly upon his now ready shoulders, recognizing the monumental truth of his mission. He knew that the golden tranquility of the Titan Age, which had flowed and drifted so patiently for so long, was a hollow, fear-driven illusion that could only be broken by a chaotic, cleansing act of immense and necessary violence. The Kureites, witnessing the sudden, intense transformation in the young god's luminous presence, paused their rhythmic drumming, the great hall falling into a profound, echoing silence that had not been heard since the moment of Zeus's secret birth. In that startling stillness, Zeus finally addressed his silent, devoted guardians and his gentle, nurturing nymphs, his voice now deep and commanding, resonating with the full, untamed authority of the Lord of the Sky, declaring his immediate intention to leave the safety of the dark cave. He spoke of the need to confront the fearful, consuming power of time itself, to free his captive family from the internal darkness of Kronos' body, and to usher in a new, ordered age built upon justice and the bright, open light of the heavens.
With a final deep breath of the cool, protective cave air, Zeus stepped out from the shadows and onto the high slopes of Mount Ida, fully embracing the open expanse of the eternal day, his gaze fixed on the distant, unmoving palace of his fearful Titan father. The time for quiet learning and peaceful hidden growth was now irrevocably over, and the great, deliberate clock of the cosmos was preparing for a sudden, cataclysmic acceleration, moving rapidly toward the inevitable final confrontation between the consumed past and the rising, undeniable power of the future. The hidden prince had finally emerged, his divine presence a sudden, sharp clarity against the vast, encompassing twilight of the Titan Age, ready to challenge the tyranny of the old world with the powerful, untamed weapon of the nascent, terrible thunder.
Zeus, now a god of powerful, mature grace, left the deep, protective silence of the Cretan cave, his departure marking the quiet, immutable end of the age of hidden growth and the silent advent of impending, world-shaking change. He moved not with the swift, clamorous urgency of a warrior, but with the subtle, flowing patience instilled in him by the slow-moving Titans, cloaking his divine light beneath a disguise of quiet servitude. The youthful god glided across the vast, sleeping landscape, his presence barely disturbing the deep repose of the earth, heading toward the distant, unmoving palace where his fearful father Kronos reigned in isolated, consuming paranoia. His strategy was woven from the ancient threads of his mother's sorrow and the quiet wisdom of Gaia, a plan that required subtlety and profound deliberate timing to unravel the absolute, unbreakable authority of time itself. He secured a position within the outer circles of Kronos' immense, echoing court, performing the seemingly innocuous duties of a cupbearer, constantly remaining within the distant periphery of the mighty sovereign's eternal, fearful gaze. Kronos, blinded by his own profound confidence in the success of his monstrous deception and the deep, paralyzing weight of his paranoia, never once suspected the radiant, true identity of the newcomer serving in his great hall. The Titan was convinced that the chilling prophecy had been utterly neutralized, sleeping quietly within the cold, silent confines of the stone he had consumed years ago, believing his throne to be utterly secure for an eternity of golden rule. The moment for the great unraveling finally arrived when Zeus, acting with the perfect, profound certainty of his destined mission, subtly introduced a prepared draught into Kronos' evening cup, a bitter, potent mixture provided in secret by the mournful Titaness Rhea. This powerful, slow-acting fluid was an emetic drawn from the very lifeblood of the Earth Mother, designed to stir and provoke a catastrophic internal upheaval within the body of the Titan of Time, forcing him to surrender his long-held captive secrets. Zeus presented the cup with a face drained of all revealing emotion, a mask of quiet servitude, and Kronos drank the mixture deeply, settling back into his deep, unmoving repose, completely unaware of the cosmic catalyst that had just flowed into his eternal being. A slow, massive agitation began to stir in the depths of Kronos' vast form, growing gradually from a faint internal tremor into a convulsive, agonizing pressure that completely shattered the golden tranquility of the ancient hall. The Titan writhed upon his colossal throne, his immense shape momentarily disrupting the careful, slow-moving rhythm of the cosmos, as the internal forces began their determined, agonizing revolt against the fear-driven tyranny of suppression.
With a final monstrous effort that echoed silently across the entire expanse of the ordered universe, Kronos was suddenly forced to yield, expelling the contents of his dreadful internal prison in a cascading, overwhelming rush of captured profound power. First to flow forth was the cold, unfeeling rock, the very stone that had been deceitfully swaddled in infant clothes, landing heavily upon the marble floor with a sound of chilling, absolute finality, revealing the painful extent of Rhea's sacrifice and the Titan's self-deception. Then, one by one, the 5 fully grown and immensely powerful celestial spirits were expelled, emerging from the chilling darkness of their long imprisonment into the sudden, overwhelming clarity of the eternal light, unharmed by their ageless captivity. Hera, the majestic spirit of queenship, emerged first, followed closely by the fertile, silent presence of Demeter, and then by the somber, deep-dwelling spirit of Hades, whose gaze was already fixed on the hidden sunless regions beneath the earth. Next, the mighty earth-shaking Poseidon flowed forth, his power humming with the immense, untamable force of the cosmic tides. And finally, Hestia, the quiet, steady spirit of the eternal hearth, completed the profound, sorrowful reunion. The 5 siblings who had spent their entire existence in the silent, swirling darkness of their father's immense stomach looked upon the luminous presence of the young god standing before them with a sudden, immediate clarity, instantly recognizing the profound kinship of their shared destiny. Zeus stood before his rescued family, his voice resonating with the deep, commanding authority of the sky, and he quickly unveiled the complete narrative of their escape, speaking of Rhea's heart-wrenching courage and the long, secret nurturing he had received in the deep, silent cave. In that sacred moment, a bond was instantly and immutably forged between the 6 liberated deities, a profound allegiance that flowed together like the merging of mighty destined rivers, settling into a resolute and shared purpose against the consuming power that had imprisoned them. The Olympians, their unity solidified by the shared trauma and the joyous, powerful recognition of their kinship, knew that they could not challenge the long-established power of the Titans alone, realizing that their initial strength required the support of older, forgotten forces. Guided by the deep, resonant wisdom of Gaia, they resolved to journey to the profound, echoing darkness of Tartarus, the deepest, most agonizing abyss where the Earth Mother's first terrifying children remained imprisoned, chained by the fearful paranoia of Uranos and Kronos. The descent into the subterranean realm was long and fraught with deep, absolute stillness, a passage through the absolute choking darkness that seemed to stretch moments into an eternity of quiet, echoing dread.
Reaching the immense, chilling confines of the prison, Zeus and his siblings finally stood before the terrifying colossal forms of the mighty Cyclopes and the 100-handed Hecatonchires, beings of immense foundational power who had suffered in silence for millennia. The 3 mighty Cyclopes, each possessing a single immense glowing eye of profound insight set into their mountainous foreheads, gazed upon the young, resolute god with a mixture of quiet awe and deep, ancient gratitude for their unexpected liberation. In recognition of Zeus's courageous act and the promise of a new, righteous order, the grateful Cyclopes immediately fashioned 3 mighty, powerful gifts, objects infused with the very essence of cosmic, untamed elemental force. To Zeus, they presented the great and terrible Aegis, the mighty shield, and the thunderbolts, powerful spears of electric energy that crackled and hissed with the furious, untamable authority of the open sky, a weapon of absolute,
cleansing light. To Poseidon, they offered the immense three-pronged trident, a resonant, earth-shaking symbol of his dominion over the deep, swirling oceans and the fundamental, restless movement of the entire world below. And to the newly freed Hades, they gave the dark, silent helm of darkness, a terrifying artifact that conferred the power of absolute, immediate invisibility, allowing its wearer to move through the visible world like a soft, fleeting shadow. The hundred-handed Hecatonchires, Briareus, Cotys, and Gaius, beings of immense, unimaginable strength whose vast, churning forms seemed to encompass the entire subterranean space, also pledged their profound allegiance to the new, rising generation of gods. Their quiet gratitude flowed forth like an unseen current, offering the promise of their limitless, brutal force in the massive, terrible conflict that was rapidly approaching. A force capable of hurling immense boulders with terrifying calculated accuracy. The alliance was finally complete, forged from a foundation of shared captivity and the immense collective power of the liberated past and the purposeful, radiant future, standing ready to challenge the slow, paralyzing tyranny of the old world. The 6 Olympians and their colossal, grateful allies ascended from the profound depths of Tartarus, emerging into the open, eternal light with their weapons now charged with foundational, untamed elemental force and their purpose settled with immutable, absolute finality. They chose as their sacred, commanding stronghold the luminous, majestic peaks of Mount Olympus, a colossal mountain that towered above the highest, most distant clouds, placing them perfectly between the earth and the boundless expanse of the deep blue sky. From this immense, unmoving vantage point, the newly formed Council of Gods looked out over the vast, unhurried world, watching the Titans slowly gathering on the distant, shadowed slopes of Mount Othrys, preparing for the great, devastating conflict that would soon shatter the stillness of the Golden Age. The stage was finally set for the Titanomachy, the immense, terrible war that would forever redefine the structure and rhythm of the cosmos, replacing the slow, fearful flow of time with the swift, decisive action of ordered, absolute power. The luminous peaks of Olympus held the bright, fierce promise of the future, while the dark, heavy slopes of Othrys held the ancient, stubborn power of the past, and the entire universe settled into a moment of profound, echoing stillness. The clouds drifted slowly, spreading gently across the sky, and the world below waited, holding its breath, completely unaware that the great, patient clock of the cosmos was preparing to unleash a storm of electric, terrible chaos that would rage for 10 long, tumultuous years.
From their luminous, towering stronghold upon the majestic, unmoving peaks of Mount Olympus, the newly formed Council of Gods looked out upon the immense, shadowed assembly of their titanic adversaries, who were gathering in ancient, colossal silence upon the dark, distant slopes of Mount Othrys. This confrontation was not merely a battle for supremacy, but a profound, necessary rupture in the fabric of eternal time, a clash between the deep, encompassing stillness of the past and the brilliant, turbulent promise of the future. The entire universe settled into a state of profound, arrested anticipation, the very air thick with the silent, immense potential of the approaching terrible storm. The war that followed was not the swift, clamorous conflict of mortals, but a vast, slow-moving cosmic struggle that stretched and drifted across the face of the silent world, consuming 10 long, deliberate years in its devastating, unhurried flow. For the first many years, the two immense forces remained largely poised, locked in a chilling, deliberate stalemate that perfectly reflected the immense, immovable nature of their divine forms, refusing to yield a single cosmic inch. The great, patient clock of the universe seemed momentarily suspended, its hands held motionless between the powerful forces of the old age and the inevitable, persistent pressure of the new. From the heights of Olympus, Zeus, the lord of the sky, moved with a controlled, flowing certainty, unleashing his powerful, crackling thunderbolts not in quick, decisive bursts, but as vast, slow arcing rivers of incandescent, pure electric energy. Each immense bolt cascaded through the boundless expanse of the deep blue sky, illuminating the ancient world below with a sudden, blinding clarity before settling with a deafening, resonant impact upon the heavily defended, shadowed slopes of Othrys. The deep, continuous roar of these celestial weapons was the new, dominant rhythm of the cosmos, a resonant, terrifying song that momentarily overshadowed the constant, rhythmic pounding of the guarding Koretes of old. Poseidon, standing firmly upon the highest, most precarious precipice of the mountain, wielded his immense, three-pronged trident with a massive, terrifying grace, its motion initiating profound, internal tremors deep within the bedrock of the slow-moving earth. With a single, deliberate thrust of the powerful weapon, he would cause the entire landscape to heave and surge beneath the feet of the assembled colossal titans, raising vast, momentary islands of raw, untouched earth, and then allowing them to slowly subside into the boiling, tempestuous oceans. The continuous seismic groaning of the planet became a sorrowful, deep counterpoint to the sharp, crackling hiss of Zeus's frequent lightning, weaving a pervasive sound of profound, unrelenting elemental upheaval. Meanwhile, the other Olympians performed their crucial, supportive roles with a measured, resolute focus, each contributing a vital force to the great, terrible unity of the emerging, ordered rebellion. Hera, the majestic spirit of queenship, provided a profound, unshakable shield of quiet, strategic focus, coordinating the movements of the nymphs and the lesser spirits who aided the effort, ensuring that the fragile logistical lines remained intact. Demeter, the fertile, silent presence, moved across the edges of the battlefield, gently drawing life and sustenance back from the deep, vast desolation created by the continuous elemental conflict, silently reminding the world of the need for eventual peaceful return. Hades, the somber, deep-dwelling spirit, utilized the dark, silent power of the Helm of Darkness, moving completely unseen between the two immense warring assemblies, performing acts of subtle, necessary disruption that slowly eroded the formidable confidence of the Titanic lines. He flowed through the shadowed camps of Othrys like an unseen current of profound, absolute stillness,
quietly confounding the strategies of the ancient enemy and spreading a creeping, unshakable sense of uncertainty and doubt among the slow-moving Titan ranks. Even the quiet, steady spirit of Hestia remained within the heart of the Olympian camp, her presence a silent, contained flame of profound, enduring unity, ensuring that the fire of their common purpose never once diminished or became extinguished. The mighty Titans, led by the fearful, ancient power of Kronos, fought back with the immense, stubborn force of their inherent, ageless authority, moving through the chaotic, churning air like slow-moving, dark-hued clouds that sought to perpetually smother the bright, electric light. Atlas, the embodiment of enduring, unmoving strength, stood like a colossal, living pillar, absorbing the furious, relentless impact of the thunderbolts upon his broad, immovable shoulders, determined to resist the profound change that threatened to undo his deep-seated existence. Koios, the Titan of profound, boundless intellect, sought to counter the subtle strategies of the Olympians, his mind racing to predict the next strike, though his ancient, slow thoughts could never fully grasp the sudden, swift logic of the rising, youthful gods. But with the arrival of the 10th, devastating year, the immense conflict had settled into a profound, painful deadlock, a slow, consuming, agonizing drain on the foundational energy of the entire sprawling cosmos, and a decisive, absolute action was suddenly required. Zeus, sensing the precise, perfect moment of absolute planetary exhaustion, resolved to release the colossal, overwhelming power that had been silently waiting since their liberation in the profound, ancient depths of Tartarus. He gave a mighty, echoing command that resonated across the deep blue sky and down into the very heart of the turbulent, trembling earth, calling forth the long-awaited brute force of the powerful Hekatonchires.
The 300-handed giants, Briareus, Cotys, and Gaius, beings of immense foundational power, surged forth from their concealed positions, their colossal, churning forms obscuring the very light of the morning sun as they began their final, terrible assault. Moving with a speed and coordinated absolute power that the slow-moving, deliberate Titans could never truly comprehend, the Hekatonchires began to pluck entire mountains from the trembling, weakened surface of the earth. These colossal boulders, symbols of the planet's enduring stillness, were hurled not in a chaotic, random storm, but as a deliberate, calculated cascade of silent, immense, absolute finality toward the dark, entrenched slopes of Mount Othrys. This overwhelming, relentless, calculated barrage was the final defining catalyst, completely shattering the deep, stubborn resistance of the ancient enemy, turning the measured, deliberate battle into a terrifying, irreversible rout. The cosmic absolute authority of the Titans was suddenly fractured by the raw, untamable power of the Earth Mother's forgotten children, their immense, unmoving forms overwhelmed by the sheer, unending volume of the colossal raining stone. Zeus, seizing this brief, absolute moment of profound systemic chaos, gathered every last ounce of his immense, contained electric power, channeling the full, untamed fury of the open sky into one final, overwhelming, annihilating storm of glorious, cleansing light. The resulting celestial event was the sound of the world being completely and entirely reborn,
a simultaneous, crushing roar of electric energy that surpassed all the quiet, ambient noise that had ever flowed across the silent expanse of the ancient universe. The sky turned an absolute, terrifying black, split continually by jagged, vibrant streaks of pure, overwhelming white light, and the immense, vast oceans below boiled and hissed, their surfaces momentarily rising as if attempting to escape the profound, searing heat. The very mountains themselves, ancient and unmoving witnesses to millennia of slow time, tilted upon their heavy axes, groaning under the unprecedented, absolute pressure of the final, shattering, cosmic upheaval. When the thick smoke finally cleared and the profound, echoing stillness returned, the long, slow age of the Titans was finally, irreversibly broken, rendered completely inert by the new, swift, absolute power of the Olympian reign. The mighty Titans, defeated and utterly crushed by the sudden, overwhelming elemental chaos, were captured not with malice, but with a firm, absolute finality, their resistance completely extinguished by the consuming fire of the sky. Kronos, the ultimate symbol of the old world, was seized and bound with unbreakable heavy chains, his eternal gaze now resigned to the immutable fate that he had spent in eternity attempting to avoid, finally conquered by the very speed he had always feared. The defeated colossal forms of the Titans were then systematically cast down into the profound, echoing abyss of Tartarus, sinking slowly through the vast, silent layers of the deep underworld, destined to be imprisoned for an eternity beneath the very foundational rock they had once commanded. The entire universe settled into a deep, pervasive quiet, the sound of the massive chains echoing silently through the lowest, deepest reaches of the cosmos, signaling the true, final end of the Golden Age and the dawning of a new, organized order. The colossal struggle was over, and the triumphant Olympians stood upon the luminous peaks of Mount Olympus, looking out over the newly quieted, vast world that was now finally theirs to govern and patiently shape.
The profound, agonizing echoes of the final, shattering celestial event gradually subsided, drifting away from the newly quieted face of the ancient world like soft, dispersing smoke, leaving behind a deep, pervasive stillness that was utterly unlike the heavy silence of the Titan Age. The colossal, devastating conflict was completely over, and the entire universe, bruised but fundamentally cleansed, settled into a long-awaited state of motionless repose, patiently awaiting the quiet imposition of its new, permanent shape. Upon the luminous, unmoving peaks of Mount Olympus, the 6 triumphant siblings stood bathed in the pure, gentle light of the resurrected sun, their presence a powerful, unified affirmation of the future that had finally overcome the paralyzing, fearful inertia of the past. The immediate necessary task was the final immutable securing of the defeated colossal enemy, ensuring that the consuming power of the old order could never again surge forth to trouble the fragile promise of the newly won peace. The defeated Titans, their immense forms now still and quiescent, were systematically cast down into the profound, echoing darkness of Tartarus, sinking slowly through the vast, cold layers beneath the deep underworld, destined for an eternity of total, silent imprisonment. Zeus commanded the fierce, grateful Hecatoncheires, whose 300 hands possessed strength beyond measure, to take up their permanent posts as the tireless, absolute jailers of this abyssal prison, their heavy presence serving as the ultimate, unyielding barrier between the new cosmos and the bound, sorrowful past. With the ancient, fearful tyranny permanently contained, the 3 great brothers, Zeus, Poseidon, and Hades, turned their attention to the momentous, defining task of partitioning the entire cosmos, seeking to establish a lasting, ordered balance of power that would prevent any future internal conflict. They approached this ultimate division not through furious combat or forceful dominance, but through the patient, ancient practice of casting lots, recognizing that the outcome of this peaceful, symbolic process was guided by the deepest, most subtle currents of shared fate. The three domains were absolute and immense, yet they were determined to govern them as parts of a unified, interdependent whole, fostering stability rather than seeking absolute, self-consuming sovereignty. The lot for the vast, boundless expanse of the deep blue sky, the realm of absolute power, boundless light, and swift, cleansing electric energy, fell naturally and irrevocably to the resolute Zeus, confirming his hard-won, absolute position as the eternal sovereign of the new divine order. He ascended to the highest, most luminous pinnacle of Mount Olympus, his majestic figure now fully realizing the promise that had been conceived in the deepest, most quiet recesses of the Cretan cave, his lightning permanently illuminating the edges of the newly organized world. The second lot, encompassing the churning, limitless power of the global oceans, the deep swirling seas, and the fundamental restless movement of the entire earth beneath the sky, fell to the mighty, tremor-inducing Poseidon. He claimed his watery domain with a quiet, powerful grace, the three-pronged trident now a permanent, visible symbol of his dominion. The eternal tides and the vast, surging waves instantly recognized the powerful authority of their new, watchful master. His presence flowed and drifted across the endless deep blue surfaces, ensuring the constant, rhythmic flow of the world's waters, a vast, comforting counterpoint to the sharp energy of the sky above. And finally, the last lot, encompassing the profound, echoing stillness of the underworld, the silent, permanent realm of the deceased spirits, and the immense hidden resources of the earth below, fell to the somber, deep-dwelling Hades. He descended with a profound, resolute acceptance into the silent depths, establishing his majestic throne in the absolute darkness, content with his solitary, necessary role as the quiet keeper of the boundaries between the fleeting life and the eternal rest. Though his domain was unseen by the light, it was an essential fixed pillar of the ordered cosmos, holding the fundamental balance of existence in perfect, unmoving check. Thus, the profound balance was immediately struck, the entire universe divided into three massive, perfectly corresponding parts: the clear sky, the restless sea, and the silent underworld. All three realms resting firmly upon the enduring, shared foundation of the earth itself. The six siblings, now fully realized and completely secure in their individual defining powers, established their permanent, glorious seat of command upon the luminous, unmoving heights of Mount Olympus, which became the eternal, central hub of their unified, ordered authority. The birth of Olympus was not marked by a single, sudden burst of light, but by the gradual, patient settling of immense power into a predetermined, graceful order, bringing the long epoch of cosmic turmoil to a final, absolute conclusion. The profound era of the Olympian gods had finally begun, an age characterized not by fear or consuming paranoia, but by the deliberate, harmonious application of justice, law, and the organized, bright power of the heavens. The world below, now safely governed by the watchful eyes of the new pantheon, settled into a deep, pervasive quiet, its people ready for the stories of heroes and the gentle, slow rhythm of their new, ordered, divine existence.